Greetings, I'm Karen Colligan, and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. So, why do I care about leadership? As a founder of PeopleThink, and in my tenure as a leader, consultant, and coach, I've certainly seen my share of very good leaders and my share of very bad leaders. And I thought, it'd be great to share the wisdom from the very good leaders. Hence, the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. You're going to hear from a variety of leaders who are in a variety of roles, sharing their leadership expertise by answering the same 6 questions. Every single leader is unique in their style and approach, and we want to capture that uniqueness and provide you, the listener, with a diverse way of looking at leadership. So let's get moving and talk to our next leadership guest. In this episode, I am thrilled to be speaking to Karen Booker, who is the managing partner of the BeBe Group, a business operations and performance management consulting firm. And that's not all, because Ms. Booker is also the current president of the International Association of Women's New York City chapter. So we're going to hear all about all that good leadership stuff. Before we get into your approach on leadership, Karen, I first want to say welcome and thank you so much for being with us today. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about you, and so that you can give us a snapshot. What is the BeBe Group and how do you operate as the president of the IAW New York City's chapter? So tell us a little bit about you, Karen, and then we'll get into the 6 questions.
Thank you, Karen. It's so nice to be on the show with another Karen.
The nice Karens. We are the nice Karens,
we are the
correct?
My leadership journey actually began with my position with the city of New York.
Oh.
I'm a senior manager, and I've been in the managerial position for, about almost 30 years. So I have a lot of leadership experience, leading small groups as small as 2 and as large as over 3,000.
Okay, that's large, Karen.
That's very large. So I've been able to take what I've learned throughout the years and apply them to different venues and organizations that I've been associated with over the years. So I only just, named the 2 latest ones that I've have the most impact, but I still try to introduce myself into new operations and new organizations all the time. And I'll find, different management styles that I'll use.
Yes. Yeah, and we're going to talk about how we have to shift our management styles at times in order to accommodate whatever role we're in as a leader, Karen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But can you tell us a little bit about the International Association of Women? So you're the president of the New York City chapter, and that, I would imagine, especially through the pandemic, put a different level of need in terms of leadership. So just tell us a little bit about that chapter, and then we'll get into our questions.
Oh, absolutely. So I actually joined IAW about 13 years ago. Mm-hmm. And at that time, it was the National Professional Association for Women. I joined as a regular member, and I was a member for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And when it was time to renew, they gave me a call, and I had forgot I had, joined the organization. They said, "Oh, we want you to rejoin." I'm like, I don't even do anything with the organization. I said, but I will make a commitment to get involved. And as long as I'm involved, then I can actually see what's the benefit of, being in this organization.
Yes.
So the president at that time was Louise Newsom, and she reached out to me and she said, "I hear you want to be on the leadership team." I said, "Yeah." And so she said, "Well, what can you do?" I said, "Well, what do you need?" And so she said, "Well, if you can coordinate our events." I said, "Sure, no problem." And I became the chair for event coordination for the chapter. Mm-hmm. And so my role was to look for these fantastic women throughout New York City and have them come and be guest speakers. And one of the things that is part of my personality is that I like to, once I meet somebody, I like to keep the engagement going. So that's what happened. I met all these wonderful women, and over the years, they have become friends.
Of course.
And maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, the organization shifted from a national to an international. So as they was getting everything reorganized, there was like a lull in the meetings. So I kind of dropped off the scene for a little bit, and I kind of missed that women's camaraderie, meeting women every month, having, great topics to talk about. So I reached back out to them and said, I hear that you're looking for a president or a vice president. I'll step up and take the role because I need to have my New York City chapter back. And if it's the only way to have it back is me being the leader, then I'm it.
Yeah.
And they were so ecstatic that I volunteered because I had all this history as well. So then it was me building a leadership team. And so I, started to reach out to people. And just as we were starting to get good, the pandemic hit.
Of course.
And it changed everything. Because, the one thing that really kept everybody going was the fact that we met on a monthly basis at the same place, the same time. And you knew you was going to see the same people. It wasn't like transient people in and out. Yeah. And so you develop friendships and, partnerships. I developed several business partnerships out of the organization.
Yeah.
It's like kind of left this gap. We had to like rethink, how we did things. And then we moved into the Zoom world.
Yeah.
And just like everybody else, it was like fun at first.
Yeah.
But then it became, it became different.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say a hassle because it's not a hassle, but it became different. And you had to use different marketing strategies to keep people engaged. So we're so happy that we are scaling down. We have not completely stopped, and I don't think we will ever stop because there's some people that still are not comfortable, coming out.
Yep.
And so, but we will reintroduce, and we actually met at our first reintroduction.
Yes, we did.
A couple of months ago now. It's easing back into the in-person.
Yes. Everybody
is excited to get back in, and we had such a tremendous showing that nice summer June evening. But I have challenges going forward because it's finding the locations to hold the meetings now. Whereas before we had wonderful corporate space.
Yeah.
With Morgan Stanley, who, had donated space to us for our monthly meetings. Previously, we were using the national headquarters of the Urban League.
Nice.
So now we're going to have to kind of find a nice space that is comfortable, that everybody can, meet.
And get to, obviously.
And get that. Yeah. So it has to be centrally located, even though we have members in the metro area. Yeah. But a lot of people come to our meetings after work that lives in Manhattan, on the outskirts. And so we need to be able to make sure they're able to travel within an hour.
Yes.
Right? Because if we're going to outlast, our meeting ends at 8:30, you don't want people out in the street at 11 o'clock. So that's going to be a challenge. We have a couple of ideas in place, and we'll, over the next, couple of quarters, we'll try them out. Once we're stable, I know people will come.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you said something that's really great when you said it was great to have camaraderie and find fantastic, what a wonderful word, fantastic women who were fantastic speakers and then became friends. And now you've even done business with some. So, I mean, that in itself,
Right.
Karen, tells you everything about the organization. And then you also, if we think about, we're talking about leadership, Karen, you've got a leadership challenge in front of you in terms of reshaping how IAW New York's chapter is really going to run because of everything that we know up to this point, which again, we'll talk about in a little bit. So that's all really exciting to know, and to know that you volunteered. I mean, that's the first leadership lesson. Anyone who's listening is what Karen decided to do was, I'm going to step up. I'm going to step up into this leadership role. And that's something that leaders do. We have to step up, and we have to take accountability, and we have to be curious and try new things. And that's, basically what you said. You're like, okay, I'll be on the leadership team. Then you're like, okay, I'll be president. I can't wait to keep talking to you about all of this. So thank you. Thank you for that. And go IAW New York City chapter. That's what I have to say.
Absolutely.
Good. So let's get into our questions, Karen. And, there's so many ways to define leadership, and it's so personal and so individual to people. I'd like to kick off our conversation in terms of, how do you define leadership?
Well, I define leadership and being a leader as the person that people want to follow.
Well, you just said something, want to, don't have
to follow.
Right. Love it.
That wants to follow. And I think that's where a lot of, and I'm putting in quotes, leaders make mistakes, where they think that people better follow. And when you have that mindset, then you're not really being a leader, you're being a manager.
Yes.
And there's a big difference between being a leader and a manager.
Yes.
It's like, if you can inspire, if you can have people want to follow in your footsteps and want to follow you wherever you go, then you're a leader. Yeah. So I keep the definition very short, very succinct.
Yeah, and easy to remember, because there's so much, Karen, that would fall under that. So people want to follow. Well, why would people want to follow? Because you've got integrity. They trust you. That you've walked in their shoes. You're going to do what you say you're going to do. I mean, I could go on and on and on. So to have that, and then that's kind of your umbrella, and it's short and sweet. I mean, there's nobody who would work with you or for you that would not understand. Oh, I get it. And she wants us to want. So beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. All right. So my second question is values. And again, these are so personal, Karen. And I truly believe that values are our North Star. I mean, it's what helps us make decisions, the good ones and the really, really hard ones. Because if we're clear about our values and we have to make a really tough decision, and we think about who we are from a values perspective, the decision becomes easier based on those values. So do share, what are your top 3 values?
Well, actually I have 5, but I'll just give you my top 3.
Well, you can give me 5. You want to give me 5? Remember, I'm one of the nice Karens, so I'll let you give us 5.
Okay. So for me, commitment is, up there. And depending on what group I'm with or where I am, the rank of the values change, right? Commitment is 1. 2, empowerment and development is also very important to me. And, and some of them I kind of put 2 words together, is respect and empathy is extremely important to me. Communication and resiliency.
Okay, so let me go through these just to make sure I've got them right and everyone has heard them. So number 1, and the order changes. So when you think about your leadership roles, I mean, we talked about two different leadership roles that you currently have. And we all know that leaders have to wear multiple hats as leaders. So the fact that values will shift in priority based on that leadership role is an important element. What's
Absolutely.
really important is foundationally, you're clear about your 5. So they can rotate in priority order, yet they are who they, kind of it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we have,
and a lot of it, depends on what style of management I'm going to be using
yes.
for that particular group as well.
Yes.
I mean, like I said earlier, I work for the city of New York. And so there's times that I have to be very bureaucratic.
Yeah.
And so all of those, values and missions and criteria that I have to measure things is, very exact, very precise, it's very legalese, and it's document.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
When at various times I've been able to be within the organization very transformative as I'm moving organization is a life organism, right? And so you grow and you shrink. And so at various times, you have to transform complete divisions and departments. And as I'm going through transformation, I have to, now present them with a totally different management style that is related to transformations, which means I got to be more understanding and more patient as we're going through the steps of iteration to get to where we need to be.
Right. And that's where that empathy would increase.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Transitions and transformations are complicated and they're emotional.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And then there's times that I have to take on that servant leadership role where, I have to protect my people. I have to, make sure that I put them out in situations where they get recognized and are able to experience different, like just this past week, I had a team meeting where we're doing a computer reorganization, and I'm in Cancun. My assistant is here. And I told her, you lead the meeting. No. And so she's like, I've never done this before. I said, but you got to learn how to do this. Yeah. Okay. So these are the steps that I want you to do. And this is this person is going to say this, and you should respond like this. Yes, so she would know the dynamics of the meeting, right? Yeah. So she wouldn't feel minimized. Yes. So, I had to kind of prep her and coach her. Yes. There comes the coaching leadership. Yes. As well. So that's why I never kind of stick in one style. I really try to assess the situation and be able to flip at a dime on what kind of management style or leadership style that I'm going to be in that day. So it might be kind of crazy. Yeah. But you have to be able to do that and know when to do it, which is the most important thing. Yeah. So as you're talking, I'm just looking at your values, and commitment comes up for that perfect example. Empowerment, no question. You're telling, the person you're going to be in this meeting, you're representing me and the group. And development, because she's like, whoa. Right. Yeah. And then communication, because you have to communicate with her to let her know how, when, and how to get it done. So that goes back again. So I really love, Karen, how you're talking about, it's almost like the dance of leadership. It's almost like, as you indicated, depending on the project, depending on the group, depending what you're leading, we all have to dance a little bit and be flexible. And that's the other thing you said. You have to assess, and then you have to be able to flip on a dime. And so that's all part of leadership. And, if we get too rigid in what and how we're going to get it done, that goes back to what you said earlier. That's management, Karen. That's not leadership. So yeah, love that. Great.
All righty. So then the third question is talking about transformation and transition. The world in general is going through an itty bitty amount of transition, between the global pandemic, the social awakening, we've got the economic implications of both of those.
Yeah.
So you gave us a little bit of an example about how you lead through transition and change. But now I'm not talking about just one person. How do you do that for a group, for an initiative, for a project, for what you're working on? How do you lead through transition and change?
Well, I mean, the first thing is you have to have your empathy cap on, right? Because this pandemic affected people in so many different ways. I remember a conversation that I had with my assistant when it first came out, and she was so freaked out about, because we also deal with the public. And, getting, documents from the public all the time. So people are touching papers, putting them in the mail, sending them to us. And so she was like, what if I catch it? And, in my mind, I said, okay, it's like we none of us knew exactly what was going on. You can't be judgmental.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You can't be judgmental. And it's like, so, okay. So then when we're touching the papers, let's make sure we use the gloves. Okay. And don't worry, just like calm down. So I really had to be not a boss then.
Yes. Yeah.
I had to be on her level.
Yeah.
Because we was facing the same exact thing.
Right. And we didn't know what we were facing.
And we didn't know what we was facing.
And
we didn't know whether we was going to be here the next day. Right. And for, again, being a senior manager, I was able to get documents a couple of weeks before that signal that the city was going to shut down. Right. And because of my role, I'm on that emergency team that got to get ready, whatever. So I had a little insight. And when it hit me that the city was going to shut down, this is New York City. We never sleep.
No, exactly.
So, for us to shut down, close all the offices, everybody work from home, was tremendous.
Yeah.
At that point, communications was key.
Yeah. Oh God. Right to the top of your values list.
Right. Right. You really had to be able to reach people where they don't want to be reached at their home. And expect them to be able to answer the phone because we're still working, but we're working from home.
Yeah.
Not knowing when we was going to be back, because we, in my particular office, we're first responders. And so some of the staff was actually going out to buildings. They had a whole different responsibility because they still were going into people's apartments.
Yes.
Being able to make sure that, again, the comfort level was fine because they had to come back to the office and interact with the staff.
Yeah.
And so that's where, again, the resilience is like everything is thrown out the window of how we did it before. And on the fly, you're making up new rules.
Yeah, exactly.
And, and implementing those rules accordingly.
Yeah.
So, and we still are. I mean, because although we have normalized it to a great deal. I have my COVID test right here on my desk, right? And my cleaner and all of the stuff and boxes of masks. This is what we live with every day.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to, again, flip on a dime and have new rules and procedures, not only for you, but for the public that you're responsible for as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and what you're saying, so, the question is around transition And transformation, transition, that's not even the right word for what you're describing. And then I go back to the resiliency. Yep, that's one of your values. And, we just got to figure it out. The other thing, Karen, as you were talking, you've got first responders, you have to develop new rules and procedures. That means that the empowerment you've got, you have to let the people who are the experts and on the ground, literally be the ones
what they have to do.
That's exactly right. So you have to empower them. Your empathy cap. You should literally, you need a hat that just says empathy on it and tie it around every time you walk into the office, a commitment to their success. Because again, what you just said, they're going home. They don't know what to do. You have to be able to help them. And obviously respecting where everybody is, because everybody's emotional capacity is just different.
It's different.
Yes.
And you have to respect it because, it's real out there in the big city.
Yeah, it's real out there. It's real out there in the city that never sleeps. Karen.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I love that. Thank you. And I'll just say all of that is just scary. I just end the period. Like, it's scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fourth question is the curiosity of leaders, and the fact that we know as leaders, we always have to learn, and we always have to be thinking about what's tomorrow, like, ooh, what's out there? Ooh, what's trending, that kind of thing. So what do you do? What are the resources you use to grow and develop yourself, Karen?
Well, I have quite a few.
Let's hear about them.
So definitely it's belonging to professional leadership organizations.
Yeah.
And once you do that, then make sure that you get the content that they distribute out, whether it's in magazine form or emails or, white papers. Just, try to keep up to date on what is now, and more importantly, what is coming out.
Yeah. What's tomorrow?
Yeah. What is tomorrow? I think the what is tomorrow, it's probably more important to me than what is today, because then I can plan. And as I'm thinking about transformation, because you always have to be thinking about where we're going in the future and preparing your staff to be ready for that new change.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you got to know what's the, the latest technology innovations.
Yeah.
And just, business rules, what's hot and what's not,
Yeah, exactly. And that, what I love about that is when you go to leadership organizations, you're meeting people who are not in your same industry. And so we're all sharing across the board about this is what's going on for me. And then all of a sudden you realize, wow, it's kind of similar. It doesn't really matter what industry you're in. And yet one might be ahead of the other this time. And then in 6 months, another industry might be ahead in another realm. So so professional organizations. Yeah.
And like for me, since most of my career has been in government, I wanted to, when I joined IAW, I wanted to know what it was like on the other side, on the corporate side.
Yeah.
And because you never know, right? You never know when you're going to switch.
Right.
And if you have no idea what is happening on that other side, then when you're there, you can't relate.
Yeah.
So it was important to see how corporate does it.
Yes.
And to, have corporate friends.
Yes.
And so that was another reason why I would, join organizations that necessarily wasn't government organizations. They were leaning more towards, like, for me, with corporate education.
Yes.
I needed to know what all the other corporate educators were doing.
Yeah.
Because at one point in my career, I was leading our corporate university, which is unusual for a city agency to have a corporate university.
Yes.
So I had to be very forward thinking and think from a very entrepreneurial perspective.
Yes.
And not from a government perspective to get this new initiative off the ground.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to be very versatile. And then I, like the webinars, the industry webinars. that are free, just like some days I was just like webinar after webinar after webinar. And I might not have saw the whole thing, but just 10 minutes was enough information to get a sense of where things were going.
Yeah.
And another valuable tool that I use and I always recommend to just everybody is Coursera, because they have all of these free courses from all of the top universities. And sometimes you may know a particular area, but you don't have the foundation. And those courses give you a chance to do some foundational learning to get you up to speed fast.
Yeah.
So,
and then you can, once you learn the foundation, then it's up to you. You can decide how you want to integrate it and what else you need to learn.
Exactly. So that's one of the things that I always recommend to, people that are on my team.
Yes.
If they're unsure about something, don't be afraid to say it. Just, go to Coursera and find, basic whatever.
Yeah.
And just get that information.
Well, that's great, because my next question is how do you get the folks that you lead development opportunities? So you just gave me one. I'm sure you do other things as well. What else do you do for your teams?
Well, I actually, when I come into a new situation where the people are already there, is I make sure that I meet with every single person in that team or in that sub team, so I can know who they are, right? And there's a question I always ask them. It's like, who do you want to be when you grow up? And they'll like stop and laugh, like, who do I want to be when I grow up? And they could be 60 years old and I'm asking the same question. Because, I'm a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
And as a lifelong learner, you never stop learning. And so you never stop growing up.
Yeah.
Right. And so you can, at 60, start a whole new career.
Yes.
And maybe, it was something that you really wanted to do when you first started your career and you got sidetracked and you always wanted to do it and you never got a chance to do it. So I want to know that.
Yes.
Because as I might not be able to assign that thing to you now, but as, the organization grows organically, I'll remember, that person wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And let's experiment putting that person in that role, doing things that are associated with that, because that's something they enjoy to do.
Yes.
And if they enjoy to do something, then they're going to do it really well. And they're going to put their heart into it.
I love that.
And so that, that first meeting, and I take notes, like who said what, so I can remember. And I, whenever I do their evaluations or, their check-ins, I check in to see whether that thing is still the same thing.
Yeah.
So, or they might have found a new interest.
Yeah.
And so I can incorporate that in my little portfolio of that person. So I can make sure that their experience at work meets their needs.
Yeah.
Because
go ahead.
Because if they can't be happy, then they're going to leave.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So it's important for leaders to know what makes their people tick, to have them to be a valuable member of the team. You don't want to train somebody and have them leave because they're not happy or they feel that they're not going to get the experience that they need. And that's why we see this big exodus of people leaving, because they feel that they're not being heard, and their needs, their personal needs now is not being recognized or touched.
Yes. And don't get me started on why people are leaving. I mean, I do a 1 hour free webinar called Lead So People Stay. And
Yeah.
the statistics with the great resignation, with the quiet quit. I mean, you and I could get on a whole nother tangent. We won't, about how and why people aren't staying.
Yeah.
And why I almost cut you off before is because I can't help going back to your values. So, you're just talking about how to you have this conversation with your employees. You ask them what they want to be when they grow up. They giggle a little bit and then oh, okay, well, she might really want to know this. You file it away, you remember it, you take your notes. And so that goes back to your commitment to them. It goes back to the development for them. And just like you said, you know what? It may not work out. However, if you've got that in your brain, there may be a place somewhere 6 months, 9 months, 10 months down the road where you go, wait a minute. I know that she was interested in X, and maybe this would be a path to help her at least understand it. So, and it goes back to being respectful of each human being, Karen, because that's what makes the difference. And if people feel heard and people feel needed, well, I don't know. Isn't that a wonderful thing?
I mean, there's been so many times when people would send me quote unquote difficult employees, and I will take anyone. It's like I'm never, how it is in the world. Like, oh my God, you're sending me so and so. It's like, okay, I hear you. Bring them in, and we'll have that conversation. And that person really looks at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah, good.
Because I'm probably the first person that asked them that
and
question.
then actually listened.
And actually listen. But when I give that person that opportunity to change the mindset of what people think about them, that becomes like one of my best employees.
Yeah. Love it.
And it's like so wonderful
to
see that transformation and how they themselves, as they see themselves change, how their posture change, how they interact with others change. And, it's like, that's what it's all about.
Yes.
When you can take a diamond in a rough, polish it up, and let them succeed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. So our last question is, what piece of art or music or literature or whatever else keeps you balanced and brings you joy? And joy is the operative word here. Because, Karen, we're a whole human being, although we get to work sometimes and you kind of forget, like, where am I? What, did I eat breakfast this morning? That kind of thing. And what this question is really getting to is what keeps you whole. So when you show up at work, you're like, okay, I'm here. It's Karen, and Karen Booker's here. I'm ready to go. And you feel like you can take on the world. So what are some of those things that fill you up, Karen?
Well, the thing that keeps me balanced is music. I was classically trained as a teenager in like all forms of music. My voice teacher, one of my first voice teachers was Camilla Williams, who was a famous opera singer. She was the first Black Madam Butterfly.
Ooh.
My second teacher was Marian Anderson. And of course, everyone knows the famous Miss Anderson. And I learned jazz from Dizzy Gillespie.
Oh my goodness.
And John Lewis. And
geez,
with Angela Bofill, amongst others, and performed in like all of the great music halls in New York City, Carnegie, Philharmonic, blah, 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 blah. And so my musical genre is endless. I like from classical to opera to jazz to pop, all forms.
Yes.
So I love good music.
Yeah.
And when I'm in that not so happy place, I need to turn on some music.
Nice.
And if I could turn on music and then be sitting by the ocean and watching the waves, then I'm in heaven.
So I'm going to end this podcast right now. I'm out of here. I'm going to do the same thing.
So that's my happy place,
Yeah.
just letting the music just take me away. And then I find my joy. I'm re-energized. I'm
Yeah.
able to, tackle the world. So, yeah.
Oh, woman after my own heart. No wonder we're both named Karen.
Yeah.
No wonder we're both named Karen. Okay, so Karen, as we're talking, we're laughing and you're very focused on our answers and what we're talking about. Let me tell you, that last question, I saw Karen Booker show up, and I'm just talking about music. The whole thing was like, music, and I've been here, and I hear that in the ocean. I was like, oh, there's Karen Booker. All right, now we got her. Yeah. Karen, thank you so much for all your ideas, for all your thoughts, for all your leadership today, and being so present with me today, and really so interested in the subject and expanding. And, as a, interviewer, you're a dream guest, Karen. And we're also, of course, grateful for your wise words. Thank you so much for being with us today.
I really enjoyed the conversation. It's one of my favorite topics, leadership.
Yeah, I can tell. No. Music in the ocean. I ain't buying what you're selling.
Yes.
No, so great. All right. So everybody, thanks for listening. And I'm Karen Colligan, and you've been listening to Karen Booker, who is the managing partner of the BeBe Group. And she's also the current president of the International Association of Women's, and it's the New York City chapter. So if this leadership podcast was of interest to you, go to our YouTube channel, People Think SF, and look at all the other distinguished leaders I've had the pleasure of interviewing. You'll learn so much about the uniqueness of leadership. I know I have. And don't forget to share with your colleagues. Till the next episode of the Let's Talk Leadership podcast, have a good one, and don't forget to keep it real. Music by Poddington Bear and editing by Mary Lee Williams. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Bye now.